Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll give you a quick introduction to measuring your action using the Balance Worksheet. We've opened a new sheet and are on the input page. To gain insights into our action, we'll need to enter some data. Before we begin measuring, make sure your test keys meet the following criteria. They are numbered with pencil, Whippen support springs are disconnected, they're regulated and have a moderate friction within an acceptable range. We are measuring according to Stanwood precision touch design method. The formula will be displayed in the top left, and the element currently being measured will be highlighted as we go. First we'll start with measuring up and down weights, because I just got the action out. For this I use a weight set that can be easily assembled to get every weight between 1 and 79 grams. First we measure up weight. I start with taking my 20 gram weight and I place it on the key. The position where we measure is the same position where we normally push the key. This is somewhere around 12 to 13 millimeters from the front. I place the 20 gram weight on the key and I bring the key down till I feel the drop. I don't want to measure from the drop because the repetition spring will push the action a bit, so I bring the key to just a fraction above the drop. I release the key and I look at the hammer. The hammer drops really fast, so the key could have a higher weight. I take big steps in weight at first, so I raise the weight by 5 grams. Now I have 25 grams and I release the key a fraction above the drop. The hammer also falls pretty fast with this weight. Let's increase it by another 5 grams to 30 grams. Now the hammer doesn't drop, so I've narrowed it down to somewhere between 25 and 30 grams. Let's have a look at 27 grams. This gives a nice and moderate movement. The movement we are looking for is one we can compare later on with the down weight. When the movement of the hammer is faster than this, it will be more difficult to compare. When the movement is slower, the hammer will not completely return to its resting position. Now that we have a comparable up weight, we will find our down weight. I start with 50 grams and I watch the hammer. There it goes. I wanted to tap the action to get the hammer through some static friction, but the hammer is already on top, so 50 grams is a bit too much. Big steps first, so let's try 45 grams. At first the hammer does nothing, but after a firm tap on the action the hammer starts moving. This already looks like a decent movement. It needs a tap, but when the hammer moves it makes a comparable movement. To be sure this is the movement I'm looking for, I also try 46 grams. The movement is faster and does not mirror the up weight anymore. Let's try 44 grams. It looks like it needs a bit more tapping, but when it moves it is the closest to the up weight movement. I compare it with the up weight, and yes, this is the up and down weight I'm looking for. What did we measure exactly? We measured how many grams it takes to get the hammer down and how many grams it takes to get the hammer up. The difference between these numbers is the friction in our action. Halfway between these numbers the action is in balance. This is the balance weight. So with these measurements we know the balance weight for our formula and we also have an idea of the friction in our action. Next up is measuring strike weight, the weight of the hammer and shank measured from the center pin. To measure this we need our scale. I'm using a setup from Stanwood, which is likely available at your piano supply store. Before measuring, always level the scale. Then place the first hammer down and level the shank. You'll need to re-level between the bass and treble hammers as the hammer tail will be shorter. The flange should point straight up so it doesn't affect the weight results. Standard flanges have a rounded surface at the bottom point, which positions the shank exactly in the middle of the weighing jig. I personally prefer weighing the hammers from a flat surface. It's simply easier than having to aim precisely over the round bearing every time. I've attached a strip of slippery Teflon tape on top to eliminate any friction during weighing. Do be aware that some flange models don't follow this standard design. In those cases, a custom-made jig will be necessary to get consistent results. Now we can start the scale and measure the strike weight. For a complete overview, I always measure all 88. Now we can move on to the keys. The next step involves measuring the front weight and key ratio, but first we need to determine where the pivoting point of the key is in this action. It's quite likely that the average pivoting point is not exactly in the center of the balance washer, but shifted slightly toward the front or the back. We can find that point with a simple trick. I select the test key and remove the keys around it. I place a weight on the catcher and find the balance weight by measuring the up and down weight. In this case, the balance weight is 41.5 grams. Now I remove the balance washer and place this sliding jig with a small ridge. I slide the ridge under the key until I find the same balance weight as measured with the washer. This is the pivoting point, which I mark with a pencil. Another alternative is to use the optimized balance washers. Find the washer that reflects the balance weight of the standard washer, and that gives you your pivoting point. I do this with 3 white and 3 black keys to ensure a reliable average across the keyboard. Now I can transfer this pivoting point to my jig. If you don't have this modification, you can also measure without the balance pin or use an alternative setup with the optimized balance washers positioned at the pivoting point. Always make sure the keys are measured without any friction caused by the balance pin. I level my key. This only needs to be done for the white keys. The black keys should be measured at the same level. The measuring point is the same as where I measured the balance weight, around 12 to 13 millimeters from the front. For consistent results, the Stanwood kit includes a dedicated front weight jig for this purpose. Make sure to tear the scale with the jig in place, and then we can measure our test keys. With this same setup, I can also measure the key ratio. The key ratio is the ratio between the measuring point and the pivoting point, and between the pivoting point and the capstan. I measure this by tearing the scale to 0 with the key in place, then placing a 10-gram weight at the capstan. The scale will display a number. If you check the Use USB Scale checkbox, you can copy this value directly into the KR field. If not, divide the number by 10 to get the formula value, so minus 5.4 becomes 0.54. The last measurement we need is the Whippen weight. This is the weight of the Whippen from the center pin to the point where it touches the capstan. To measure this, I use my jig with the frictionless tape and the front weight jig. The Whippen can't be leveled with a spirit level, so this needs to be done by eye. And with that, we've now measured everything the formula requires, except for R. R stands for ratio, and this will be calculated automatically by the Balance Worksheet.